Hello and welcome to Team GB's In Conversation With series. Now we're doing a three-part special series for Mental Health Awareness Week, where we're really going to be focusing on athletes' mental health and mental well-being. I'm going to be sharing a lot of my stories with them. They're going to be sharing a lot of their stories with me. So we've got three athletes lined up. First up, we have Helen Richardson-Walsh, who won Olympic gold in 2016, quite famously as part of the women's hockey team. Now, a very insightful interview where she goes into quite a lot of detail about the struggle she's faced with depression and finishes it off with how that's influenced her life now as a coach. So really worth a watch. And it goes without saying, please like, subscribe, comment and share this video as far and wide as you possibly can.
So today I'm delighted to be joined by Helen Richardson-Walsh. She became the youngest female hockey player ever to represent Team GB when she took the field at the 2000 Olympic Games. Her Olympic accolades grew from there, where she won a bronze medal in 2012 and most famously won a gold medal in 2016 in front of a captivated nation watching back home, which I'm sure everyone will remember. So welcome, Helen.
Thank you very much, Callum. Nice to be with you this evening.
Well, no one said that so far, so that's a win early on. So I thought it'd be. What's that, sorry?
See how I feel at the end.
Well, no, everyone said at the end, just not many people have said at the beginning. So I think it'd be really good to kind of kick off with the kind of first accolade, the first facts that I used in your introduction, being the youngest female hockey player ever to represent Team GB back in the year 2000. Now, obviously, this series is about mental health, but just from a kind of experience point of view, what was it like to have that tagline attached to you and to be competing at your first Olympic Games at 18 years old?
Oh, do you know what? I think you're the first person. I mean, obviously, I've had quite a few interviews in my time as an athlete. I think you're the first person who's actually asked me that. But you know what? When I was that age, going to my first Olympic Games, I was just loving it. I was just loving everything about it. I definitely didn't kind of attach any extra pressure. In fact, actually, I kind of felt like because I was so young that it just took all the pressure off because I was the youngster in the team. There wasn't really a huge amount of expectation. I didn't feel, and they're the older players that should be stepping up and doing stuff. But yeah, so I think, to be honest with you, I just loved it. I loved every minute of it. It was just like soaking it all up. I did get the nickname Cocky when I was younger, which may have been because of my confidence. But yeah, that's probably what I was outwardly showing a little bit. So yeah, I didn't really necessarily feel that extra pressure. I just loved it, loved everything about it. I think when I went there, I mean, with maybe the nickname Cocky, I thought we were going to go there and we were going to play really well and we could definitely win the thing. What I now know, the experience that I've now got, we were miles off back in Sydney. And I learned a heck of a lot in that tournament. And one of my best memories is actually at Sydney, watching the final and then watching the Aussies get their gold medal. And really, that was a real big moment for me, a kind of turning point in the direction of, where I wanted to take my hockey career. In that moment when I was watching them, I wanted to become an Olympic champion. Whereas kind of before that, yes, I wanted to go to the Olympics. Yes, I wanted to win the Olympics. But in that moment, I was now prepared to do what it took to win the Olympics, if that makes sense. It's kind of easy to say, oh yeah, I want to be an Olympic champion. But to actually now, okay, go and do what it takes, I think it's a different beast altogether.
I don't mean to sound like patronizing with this at all, but it's actually quite sweet that you got to your first Olympic Games and then that was the catalyst for saying that this is what's going to change me, this is what's going to drive me forward. Because
Yeah.
for me, it was spectating in London 2012, and I think we're quite similar in terms of like, I feel a bit ashamed when I speak to a lot of athletes, and they're like, from 4 years old, I knew I wanted to win Olympic gold, and I'm kind of sitting in the corner of the room saying I didn't actually have my kind of like Olympic awakening until about 2012. But you were kind of in the same boat with that.
Yeah, no, I know, and I kind of, again, with you a little bit on that, I feel a little bit embarrassed that actually I didn't really have that moment until I was already there. But that's the truth, and I guess with hockey, unlike cycling, unfortunately, I wasn't surrounded by Olympic gold medalists. There were a few, I think, in the Sydney team, bronze medalists, but obviously as a women's team, we'd never won the gold. We didn't know how to do it. So there was no expectation on us at all, whereas obviously completely different to cycling and rowing and those two sports in particular. But actually you guys were our inspiration when we were going for the London 2012 Olympic, as in the cyclists, your program and winning gold medal after gold medal, and how you managed to do that. That was a massive inspiration for us going for the London Olympics in building our program. Yeah.
I think that's quite a good kind of starting point for this conversation, because, you went into 2000 Games with that kind of innocence, and then you had that Olympic drive. And then I guess we're slowly moving towards that point in 2008, where you've spoken quite openly about suffering from depression. But what was that kind of journey? I know we're spanning 8 years here, but I guess it must have changed from that innocence, doing it for the love of the sport, doing it for the experience, having that kind of cocky mentality. How did that gradually shift over time to, I guess, the pressure must have increased, the expectation must have increased over that time?
Yeah, I think so. The big kind of moments that I had. So after Sydney, came back. I went to university, quit university after a term. Kept on playing hockey. Went to Commonwealth Games, World Cup, stuff like that. And then in 2003, I had a really bad injury. So one of the tendons in my ankle ruptured. I'd had injections and things like that. And I ended up actually not being able to play hockey for 2 years, needed 3 operations in the end. The third one had to take a bit of my hamstring and have that kind of weaved in and out of the tendon in my ankle. And I didn't come back to play until 2005. So in that period of time, I really learned about myself. Well, started to learn about myself. There was a lot more learning to do after that. But in that moment, I really struggled, because sport and hockey was like literally everything to me. That was my life. I grew up with 3 older brothers. All we did was play sport. I played every sport. And then suddenly it was taken away from me. And it wasn't just obviously the physical on the pitch playing, it was my teammates, the social side, that sense of belonging and my identity, and suddenly that was all gone. And it was even questioned whether I would get back. And one surgeon said, "Oh no, I can mend it, but the chances of you getting back and playing for Great Britain again is pretty remote." So there was a big chunk of time there that I had to deal with quite a lot. So when I then came back and I did make it back, that drive in me was even more, that the fire had kind of grown in that period of time. And so when it was coming back, I probably appreciated it a little bit more when I did get back onto the pitch. But I wanted to win. I wanted to win, and there'd been so many losses and disappointments. And so then going to the Beijing Olympics and coming 6th out of 8, it was just another disappointment. Never really feeling like we were kind of getting anywhere. So yeah, I grew a lot in that time, but then that drive to be better, to win, got even stronger. as
Yeah,
well.
because it must have been interesting from an identity point of view, given that you'd gone to the 2000 Olympics. Because I think to a lot of people, but this is kind of my experience, but a lot of people in your life kind of think of you from that point onwards when you become an Olympian, and even more so if you become a medalist, as a hockey player, as an athlete, as a cyclist, whatever.
Yeah.
But it doesn't sound like you kind of fought against that a great deal because of kind of coming out of uni after one term. Was that a bit of a knee-jerk reaction, or was there kind of like a bigger piece in there?
No, I just completely chose the wrong course.
Okay, no, fair enough.
Yeah, I started doing human biology, and yeah, it just was not the right course, but it also wasn't the right time. Like I'd literally come home from the Olympic Games, missed Freshers Week, because I was in Sydney, and straight into university. It just wasn't right for me at that time. I wasn't a massive academic, so but that's where I'm really grateful that I had a mum who was so supportive, and there was no expectation from her to do or be anything. It was just, okay, well, if that doesn't make you happy, then that's fine. And actually, I didn't have any pressure from my parents in terms of sporting success or anything like that, which, yeah, again, I'm really grateful for. Throughout that period of time, I was dealing with coming out, being gay, and starting a same-sex relationship and stuff like that. And so, yeah, that was, to be fair, I did struggle with that. And hockey was my safe space. That's where I could be myself. That's where I could just be me on that hockey pitch. Nobody could ask me any questions that I didn't want to answer. I didn't have to do anything I didn't want to do.
For me, actually, it's really almost encouraging and quite a positive story that you felt like hockey was a safe space in which to share that.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, yeah, again, I feel really lucky that I grew up in an environment that it was pretty open. Not necessarily right from the start. I think when I first got into the team, there were definitely gay people in the team, but it wasn't really spoken about, actually, if I'm honest. So even hockey has got so much better in that regard. But yes, it wasn't necessarily open and spoken about, but it was there, and so it kind of was spoken about, if that makes sense. It was like underneath the surface, and you could feel safe being who you wanted to be. But even so, coming out is hard. Well, not hard for everyone, but the majority of people, I think, and whatever space you're in, it's still difficult, because it's not necessarily what others are going to think of you. More often than not, it's what you're thinking about yourself. So yeah, but yeah, again, grateful that I had that safe hockey space that I could do that in.
So you mentioned earlier about that kind of struggle around about 2008. Would you mind going into a little bit more detail about when things started to sink?
Yeah, so I think so it was after the Beijing Olympics. Moved to the Netherlands, actually, to have a season out there. So things had changed, and I was over there, and I just started to I was just crying all the time. I just found myself getting upset, but not just a bit down in the dumps, just like properly then crying. And this could go on for an hour or two, and it would really drag on. And my lifestyle was really different over there. So actually, for the first time in my life, I was actually training full time. But it wasn't really the same full time as what it ended up being for what we did for the London Olympics, because I'd never done it before, and it was for a club. So I was on the pitch 5 times a week, six times a week, which is pretty much full time. For a hockey player, that's enough. But I wasn't really doing the strength program alongside that and stuff. So my days were really there was not a huge amount going on. Go to bed late, get up late, and I just got myself into this place where I just didn't know how to get out of it. And I kind of obviously I kind of knew something was wrong. I don't know how you experienced your mental health problems, but I knew something was wrong, but I didn't really know something was wrong, if that makes sense. I kind of thought, this can't be normal, this can't be right.
Yeah, I think for me it was a mixture of like when I was at my lowest, I was like, this isn't normal, and then maybe if that phase would pass, I'd be like, oh, that's fine, it's never going to happen again.
Yeah, that's exactly what I did. I'd like be crying, and then I'd be okay for a few days and think, oh, I'm fine, I don't need to talk to anyone. And then even if I eventually then did speak to someone, the same cycle goes again. Oh no, you know, for maybe a few months kind of not great, and then you have a month where everything's okay, and then actually also I stopped doing the stuff that I was doing.
No, I always find the cycle almost like sometimes I'd almost get verging on euphoric after coming out of that kind of low, because just so grateful it was over.
Yeah.
But then that kind of made falling back into that cycle even more damaging, because your mood is going from here to there instead of from there to here, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know.
But was I guess this could be quite topical at the moment, but was there, and it's something that a lot of cyclists face, you know, when you're a junior athlete, a lot of the cyclists go out to make a name for themselves in Belgium, the endurance athletes, but a lot of them talk about how tough it can be, not necessarily from a training point of view, but just from living in a different country and having that isolation in there a little bit. But it's interesting to hear from you that being part of that, you know, because you talked earlier about your teammates kind of lifting you up and that kind of close-knit community, but did you still feel that kind of isolation element living out there?
Yeah, I did, because I think because it was the Netherlands, obviously they're speaking a different language. I couldn't speak the language, I couldn't understand it, and so even though I was with a team and I could understand a little bit of what was going on, there was a huge amount that I didn't. And so I didn't really feel like I truly belonged like I had done in my club teams at home and the international team. So yeah, I was part of a team, but I didn't really feel like it. And then, you know, the language barrier just in general in life, you know, kind of going to the shops and all that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, I just didn't, it was absolutely brilliant for my hockey. I played for the best team in Europe, and in terms of developmental, you know, developing me for hockey, it was brilliant. I really enjoyed the training. It was mostly gameplay, so I got loads of enjoyment out of that. But then as the kind of towards the end of the season, when I guess the honeymoon period of being out over there for the first few months, and everyone's, you know, nice to the foreigner for a little bit. Once that started to die down, yeah, it definitely just got worse and worse. I then didn't particularly enjoy the hockey so much towards the end.
And is that when you know something's wrong, I guess, because it's obviously a love and a passion of yours, and when you lose that, that's when.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, and even though we're winning every week, yeah, it just wasn't a great fit, I don't think. And so when I look back at that period, and I think, you know, obviously talk about having suffered with depression, which is what the doctor labelled it as. Which I don't doubt that's the case, but there was a reason. I guess there was a reason for it, because I did feel a little bit isolated at that time.
How did you start to find your way out of that? Did you kind of, was it a case of breaking the cycle or waiting it out, I guess?
Yeah, I think I came home. I think that's what did it. I think it was so it's halfway through the season, so I think it was over Christmas time. And I actually went to see the team doctor, our GB team doctor, when I was at home, about something completely, you know, something unrelated. And he obviously picked up on something and asked me how I was feeling. And I think I must have just burst into tears. But you know, when someone asks you that question and you're not great, it just all comes out, doesn't it? And so he was great, and you know, we had that conversation, and he actually suggested that I go onto medication, which to begin with I was like really unsure about. You know, you hear so much stuff about kind of happy pills and stuff like that, and I don't really know a huge amount about it, but I decided to start taking medication, and actually I think it really helped reasonably quickly, but then I think because of that I stopped taking them. I didn't mind starting to take them, but I wanted to get off them as quickly as possible. So then as soon as I started to feel better, I then just thought, oh, well, I'll just stop taking them. So I did that, and eventually the season ended. I came home because that's when we started training full-time for London. And, you know, back at home, I started to feel much better. And so I did start to deal with it then, but I didn't really I didn't see anybody about it other than the doctor for that one time, and kind of, so that was it really, and now everything was fine, and I was just cracking on with hockey again, training for the Olympics, so everything was fine.
So I guess obviously you started to get better from that point on. You know, started kind of loving hockey again, playing quite well, you know, leading to a first Olympic medal in 2012.
Yeah, it was basically just kind of back on track, and you know, the London Olympics was this opportunity for the hockey team where we could train full time for the first time, and as players we were kind of empowered to build our program, you know, really build it, like which days were we going to train, and you know, how often, and all this stuff, and the vision and the values, and all, you know, really build it. And it was like a dream come true. It was like what I'd wanted for, you know, for the whole of my career. And so it was everything, but it was also then all consuming. At the time, in a good way, I wouldn't have changed any of it. And so, yeah, I was just cracking on. We were getting better. We started to win world medals. And then obviously, you know, London happened, didn't quite reach our target of winning the gold, but we got pretty close. And, you know, we were a completely different team to what we were before. And for the first kind of 10 years of my career, completely different team. And I just loved it. So much ownership, and yeah, where I wanted to be. In 2013, one of my discs ruptured in my back. I had surgery, came back, maybe too soon, I don't know. But I got back onto the pitch, and then more of those bits came out, and they were floating around my spinal cord. And for anyone who's had back pain will know how debilitating it is. And it kind of just took over my whole life. And because of that second back surgery that I needed, it was a race against time for me to get back for the World Cup in 2014, which I tried to get back for in a silly amount of time. I failed to get selected, but I kind of still thought that I could. And so,
I mean, that's rational though, because like it's like what your surgeon said about the ankle, that you'd never play for GB again, and now you're 2 Olympic medals better. And that's something on a kind of side note. That's something that's incredible about a lot of athletes, is how quickly they can recover when your body's in peak shape. But in that instance, didn't come together, I guess.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, very true. And I think, yeah, your body is capable of so much more than we think it is. And for, I think, 8 weeks, I mean, when I say that out loud, 8 weeks, like I think I had 9 weeks after surgery until selection. After back surgery is, you know, crazy. But I thought, I'm the kind of person who I didn't want regrets from not having tried. So literally I killed myself for 8 weeks. I did all the little tiny rehab exercises to begin with, and then I ate all the right things, and to the minute detail, went into the oxygen chamber, hyperbaric chamber. I did everything, and so when I missed out on that selection, it literally just hit me like a ton of bricks. I just didn't know what to do. I literally I broke my body. Then started to, even though I was physically okay, I think everything just started to shut down, actually. Physically, mentally, I couldn't compute it in my head. I couldn't compute this non-selection. And it was also, I think, because of the timing of it. So when I had my ankle injury, that was when I was still early 20s. I was young. I had still a long career ahead of me. I thought, even if I get back, whereas this was with a new coach. I was early 30s. It's my back. It's pretty. I've had 2 back surgeries. I'm thinking that's it. I'm thinking that's the end of my career. I'm never going to get back, and this is how it's going to end. And so that was real struggle. And so I kind of just went into this downward spiral. And I would catastrophize everything. So, physically, stuff with my back, the tiniest little pain I would get would turn into another disc has gone and I'm going to need another surgery, like that kind of stuff.
Or like pestering the physio in the middle of the night because you think it's an emergency.
It would always happen on a weekend as well, when you've got 2 days until you have to you can see the physio every time.
No, I've gone I've gone on a strop about that before, because I'm like, we're training 7 days a week. The physio should work 7 days a week. Get them in.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more.
And then I realised how hard they work, and I'm like, okay, you take the weekend off. It's fine.
I know. They barely go home themselves.
I know. But there seems to be like do you think there was a slight pattern to those both of those dips in some respect? Was it always tends to be associated with injury, do you think?
Well, so obviously the first one in 2008 I wasn't injured, but I didn't. I had a little bit of a loss of identity in that I wasn't at home, and I didn't feel like I belonged. And so, with that injury, I definitely didn't belong, because I hadn't been selected, and I felt like I was on the outside, and my career was coming to an end, and so I think there was that just loss. I think loss of hockey, loss of myself, like I said at the start, I was a hockey player. That's what I was. I'd started to introduce a few more bits, actually through that period of time. In 2010, I started a psychology degree, actually, because I got interested in it, but also to try and have something for afterwards, all that kind of stuff. But I just love playing hockey. I would, if my body allowed me to, I would do it for forever. And so when it was taken away, it was really hard. So in 2014, one of the things I found, so I did go to the Priory. I saw a therapist, which was brilliant. I also started doing mindfulness, and I started using the Headspace app, and that really helped me kind of get out of my thoughts. But I did it when I wasn't playing hockey. And so when I got back and I tried to carry on doing it, I really struggled. It was like a battle in my head.
Because as to whether to let the emotions in or not.
Well, it was kind of like, it really got me to a really good place mentally. But it was almost like this Zen type place, which I couldn't do when I was playing hockey. I couldn't be that person and a hockey player. I think it's possible, but I couldn't figure out how to do it quickly enough. So yeah, I mean, and I guess that's one of those, mindfulness is one of those things that really helped, and one of those things that I should do more of.
Yeah. It's okay. I've still got aspirations of stuff that, you know, we should, I mean, like it's going to become, I believe it's going to become like bigger over the next few years. You know, the amount of focus we've seen on physical health over the past 10, 20 years is going to do the same thing with mental health as well. But before you got to the Priory, were you kind of what prompted that action to go to the Priory in the first place? Because that's quite a big step for a lot of people to accept that kind of help.
The name, the Priory, was definitely a bit scary, but I think it also filled me with confidence as well, because it's obviously got a good name, so therefore I feel like I'm going to the right place. So it was a bit double-edged sword, a little bit. I think I was just trying to remember how it came about. Obviously, because it was new, and 2014, it was a new thing that the English Institute of Sport introduced as a new service that we could access as athletes. And so I think I must have been one of the first athletes to use it. And I think it must have been one of the doctors that recommended it. Obviously, I was still kind of coming back from my back stuff, so I was in with the doctor and physio quite a lot, and it would have been obvious. It would have been so obvious where I was at and that I needed help. Again, I was kind of back to where I was in 2008, where kind of the uncontrolled crying. And so, I mean, at that point, it was, when you said, did I hide it before? At that point, it was impossible for me to hide. I was that low, you know, I couldn't even crack a smile when I'd see people. So yeah, it was, I think, one of the doctors that recommended it. And yeah, I was kind of jumped at the chance a little bit, to go and speak to somebody just completely removed from it all. You know, as an athlete, you've got the coach, you've got the physio, you've got the strength and conditioning coach, you've got the doctor, you've got all these different people involved. But I just wanted somebody who didn't know me, somebody who didn't know the coach, somebody who didn't know anybody, actually. I think because the stuff that was going on, and because I actually had kind of stopped. It wasn't, I think I just needed that different perspective. So, you know, if I'm saying about somebody, you know, if someone who doesn't know anything, I'm saying this situation and they go kind of, you know, you're like, do you know what I mean? It just kind of, it hits you in a different way.
The athlete reality check can be massive. Well, it's like, I mean, we think about it with life and death, and then you tell someone on the street and they're like, why is that even an issue, I guess? But you know.
No, I just think the different perspective really helped.
And I guess having gone through an episode in 2008 and then having an episode in 2014, how did that kind of shape your view of depression? Because I guess as someone who's had a very bad episode 2016, 2017, I kind of like the comfort blanket of thinking that I'm done with it forever. You know, I'm still on medication, but I guess is that kind of a message for a lot of people suffering with mental health issues, that it might not be something that leaves you, it might will, but just be aware of that happening as a possibility.
Yeah, I think so. I think when it came back in 2014, then I started to think this is something that I need to learn how to deal with and cope with. It was clearly better than I was doing. But it's one of those things where I was also like thinking, I don't, if I'm being honest, I don't want to, I don't want to be that person.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why when I maybe talk about it now, I do sometimes question whether I did have depression.
No, I still do that as well. Like,
Oh, good.
I was doing research for this, and I was sitting in the car, and I was like, maybe I didn't have it after all. And then I could just
Not just me.
Yeah, no, I could just witness like my whole support network just face palming like, in unison at that time, going like, he still hasn't got it.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think, it's like, you've talked about that kind of cycle of grief. It's like denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. It is a bit of a mind muddle kind of thing the whole time, isn't it? Of questioning.
Yeah, definitely. And because when you then feel fine, you're fine. It's like, well, I wasn't that. And when, our memories aren't great, are they? And you kind of look back and you think, oh, it wasn't that bad. But when you really remember and you kind of think about those moments when you're, curled up on the floor and you can't move because whatever, and, then you kind of think, well, actually, no, there definitely was something wrong.
Yeah.
But I just think that those coping strategies, those coping mechanisms, whatever it is, everyone's talking about it at the moment. I think I think I'm now going through something else. I'm now having obviously stopped playing hockey and out of choice, it was the end of my career. I finished in the best way possible, but it was still hard because that identity of a hockey player was so strong, and there's other amazing things that I'm doing and things like that, but it's still a transition and a change, and which is difficult. Again, in 2014, one of the things that I learned, this is one of the most embarrassing things, I learned that I needed to spend time with friends. And when I say that, I just think it's just so stupid, but we're all guilty of it. Kind of our diary fills up with work and all the stuff that we think we should be doing, rather than actually, let's just make sure I see my mates on a Friday night or, a Saturday afternoon or whatever, and making sure I put that into my diary. And I learned that in 2014, to spend time with my friends. So yeah, my friends was such an important network at that point, probably even more so because Kate was going through her own stuff at that time. The World Cup didn't go well, and the kind of the team environment wasn't great, so there's a lot of stuff going on, and so I needed to find my own support. But since then, Kate and I support each other, and because we understand where we've been. Both of us can just kind of any day just be like, do you know what, I'm not feeling great today. I don't know why, but I'm just not feeling great. And the other one would be like, okay, go and sit down or get you a cup of tea, whatever, and kind of you don't have to explain it, which is quite nice. Which I think I hope where a lot of people can get to. We're both pretty good at recognizing the signs and triggers. We did a lot of stuff on that within the team actually, but yeah, we'll always need that bit of extra support to kind of recognize it a bit. It's more just the supporting side when it's starting to go a little bit wrong. I think every experience that I've had has really shaped the kind of how I'm coaching now. I'm taking a club team up in Cambridge, and I've had so many different coaches, and how I've experienced the kind of my mental health journey just really allowed, well, I think my mental health journey, but also being gay as well, that's really given me a perspective of difference. and that we are all different. And I definitely didn't appreciate that when I was younger. And just, really appreciating that we all need different things and trying to allow space for that when I'm coaching. I've only been the head coach 1 year, and for half of that I was pregnant, actually, so I missed half of it. So half the season. But
well, that's a good Olympian mindset. Come in, get the job done.
Exactly. But I think just being a lot more, just being trying to be as understanding as possible for all the different situations that are going on. It's a club team. They've got full-time jobs, alongside of it. Whereas my experience of, you come to training every week and you give everything, and because that was where I was as an athlete, and that's what I was doing. But for these guys, it's about having fun, first and foremost. And part of that is winning. If you win, you have fun. But that was where I wanted to go with it this season with my team, and really build an environment where people could be themselves, and just enjoy spending time together. That kind of awareness of difference and allowing for that.
Well, I think that's a fantastic note to end on, and kind of really illustrates that legacy kind of takes two forms. It's not necessarily just about the medals, it's about sharing those life experiences and memories with the people that you're coaching now, and building on that legacy. So thank you very much for joining this evening.
No worries, thank you.
So that's been our first episode of Team GB's In Conversation with Helen Richardson-Walsh. I think you'll all agree it was a really insightful story, and hopefully a few answers that you might not have heard before. I think Helen admitted that herself. But a very inspiring journey to see where she came from and where she is now. And hopefully she's going to continue to pass on all that experience to people she's coaching in the future. Next up, we have part 2 with Alex Davis, a rugby sevens player. Now, unlike Helen, he unfortunately didn't take to the competitive pitch at Rio. He got a fairly serious ankle injury in the warm-up. Now, we talk about that, and we also talk about a very personal tragedy in his life with the unexpected and quite sudden death of his father, which ultimately led to Alex questioning retirement and kind of falling out of sport and falling out of love with rugby. But the really positive bit towards the end is we hear about how he got himself better, fell back in love with sport, fell back in love with rugby, still committed to that Olympic dream. So make sure and tune in for that. We've got a premiere on Team GB's YouTube channel coming up for that, as there was for this first episode. So please like, subscribe, and share as far and wide as you can.